a little bit about our work. But before I do that, I really want to give a warm welcome, and let's make some noise and give him the energy that he deserves. Hasan Piker!
Yo!
All right.
What's up, Hasan?
What's up,
Woo! Hasan!
What's up, chat? Some of you may not know who I am. I'm Hasan Piker. I go by Hasan Abi on Twitch, Hasan the Hun on Twitter, and anti-Semite when David terrorist for Randy Fine. I go by many names. But it is a real honor to be here with you guys today and to talk to you about this important movie that we're going to be watching, Voice of Hind Rajab. It was incredible. I mean, I cried so much. I don't know if you guys have all seen it already, or if this, is it going to be your first time? Anybody? Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, it's brilliant. It's a really, really important film. I know people say that, but they've done such an amazing job of showcasing the many invisible ways in which the Israeli occupation is ever present as a force that has devastating impact on the lives and livelihood of regular Palestinians. And you will understand when you watch. It's very ominous. This presence of Israel without even showing it. It's very similar to Zone of Interest. Yeah. In many respects. It's interesting because one of the producers, I believe, also produced Zone of Interest as well. But one of the other tie-ins to what I also experienced personally of the invisibility of cruelty, with the ever-present ominous nature of cruelty, was something I reflected on quite a bit in my recent travels to Cuba. For those of you who don't know, Cuba, Caribbean island, 90 miles off the coastline of the United States, has existed under what many would call economic terrorism, a blockade, these ridiculous, arbitrary, but otherwise very cruel sanctions regime for the crime of developing sovereignty and dignity for their people, with the successful Cuban Revolution. And I went to Cuba recently, for those of you who don't know, and I saw the sanctions in real time. I saw the impact of the sanctions in real time. Many don't know this, but in the last 3 or 4 months now, until recently, with the Russian tanker that had just recently docked in the Havana ports, the island of Cuba had not received a single drop of oil, with some exceptions. Some oil was allowed by the American government into the island for private enterprise, including the 5-star hotel that I stayed in, which was reported on quite a bit by New York Post and every other reactionary newspaper. Now, what many didn't explain in that story is that it's illegal for me as an American citizen, and for all of you as American citizens, to stay in whichever hotel you want to in Havana. Tourism is the lifeline of the Cuban government and the Cuban population. It's the only way that foreign capital can enter the country. It's profoundly important, especially because the American sanctions have rendered commerce impossible, right? The American government has made it illegal for all of you guys and myself to stay in whichever hotel we want to stay in inside of Cuba. There's only 4 5-star hotels, they claim, that we can stay in if we want to. If I stayed in any other hotel, I would have to go to prison for 10 years and pay up the fines totaling $250,000. Now, as an American citizen, I find that unconscionable. I find that so ridiculous, this arbitrary restriction. And yet, there are so many restrictions like that, not only for, obviously, American citizens traveling to Cuba, but also restrictions that have made everyday Cuban lives a living nightmare. They have rolling blackouts due to the oil blockade, where there's just no power. We experience it. There's no power for 36 hours at a time. Food spoils because there's no refrigeration. Yeah, and just like you said, it's a very similar process to how regular Palestinians have to exist under COJAT, with the ridiculous restrictions in Gaza, and regular Palestinians, ordinary Palestinians, have to exist under the crippling occupation. But I'll take it one step further. This comparison wasn't just something that I experienced, but it's also something that I actually heard from a new friend I made in Cuba. His name is Murid. Murid's Palestinian. He is one of the 250 Palestinian medical students that are currently getting a free education in the University of Havana in Cuba. And Murid grew up in Palestine, he grew up in Gaza, and he told me that the sanctions regime implemented by the United States of America is very similar to the same restrictions that he experienced growing up in Gaza under the occupation of Israel. And he said, as far as the comparisons goes, and basically said, look, it's very similar. It's just they're not bombing yet. They're not bombing Cuba. But this unnecessary cruelty has to end. Not only in Palestine, occupied territories, and across the board, but also in every other place around the world where America's fingerprints have devastated the existence of ordinary citizens who are simply suffering as a consequence of being born in a country that America has a desire to destabilize. So that's what I wanted to share with you as far as my personal experience from what I saw, the cruelty of the American empire, the arbitrary nature of it, and how unnecessary it is. But I'll say one other thing. It's not an unstoppable force. One of the things that I've realized in these last 2.5 years is that many of you have participated in these protests alongside myself, and we've been able to successfully deliver a sea change in the attitude on Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
Before October 7th, I've been an avowed Zionist, avowed anti-Zionist for the last decade plus, right? Before October 7th, when I talk about Palestine, people say, Pakistan? What are you talking about?
When I say I'm Palestinian, they're like, oh, Pakistani.
Yeah. So most people had no idea what Palestine was, or people that were knowledgeable on the issue were deeply Islamophobic, and they were ultra-Zionists. They would immediately start questioning my attitude, my position, immediately start smearing me and claim that I'm anti-Semitic. And that hasn't really stopped. But what has changed is that now the average American is actually aware of the cruelty of the Israeli occupation, the everyday cruelties, but also certainly the most salient impact of this ongoing genocide that Palestinians are experiencing in Gaza. Now, something similar is taking place in Lebanon as well. And every day, more and more Americans are aware of it. And we all have a responsibility to continue this fight, whether it be going out and protesting, demanding boycotts, divestments, and sanctions from the state of Israel, but also even to go out and vote for candidates that are anti-Zionist, that will actually put up a strong fight in opposition to what seems to feel like this unshakable loyalty that the American government has to the state of Israel. A loyalty that we have personally seen, especially in the last week or so, especially the last 40 days with Operation Epstein's Fury.
Yeah.
Now on its 41st day. What was shocking to me was obviously what was shocking to me immediately was the fact that America is a little bit of a paper tiger. Apparently that is the case. It doesn't have the force projection capabilities that even I thought it had. America can no longer protect its allies. Having an American military base no longer offers you any sort of serious protection, but basically turns you into a missile sponge or a shot-head drone sponge. And outside of that, though, one of the things that I found very interesting was the New York Times reporting. The New York Times is no friend of the Palestinians. and therefore no friend of the truth. But it was the New York Times that reported that Benjamin Netanyahu was in the Situation Room making these decisions, maybe alongside Donald Trump, or maybe telling Donald Trump exactly what to do. Now, that's important. When you have one of the most consequential Zionist newspapers accurately reporting on the corrosive influence that Benjamin Netanyahu has on American foreign policy, that means things are changing. So we need to make sure that we take advantage of that momentum and we continue pushing, we continue advocating, and we continue making those demands. One other positive improvement that took place in American policy was when AOC came out and said that she no longer makes a distinction between defensive and offensive weapons.
Woo!
That, long overdue was right. You're absolutely right. However, that's now officially become the new litmus test, which is good. That means that the conversation is shifting in our favor. The conversation is shifting in the direction of truth and justice. Step by step, little by little, when people like AOC come out as prominent figures and refuse to make that distinction any longer and say, nope, no more weapons to the Zionist entity, to the Nazi state of Israel, then now we have room to grow. We have room to demand more because the permission structure is expanding. So that's something that I hope you guys can take away today as well. And just, remember that change is not going to happen overnight. It takes a long time in some instances, and sometimes it can be rather fast. I would say that in comparison to the last 10 years of my anti-Zionist advocacy, the past 2.5 years, change has happened almost overnight.
Yep.
Many years, and I think many Palestinians would also agree to this, Palestinians living here, it was virtually impossible to make Americans recognize Palestinians as human beings or even know about them at all, and now it's the majority position. Unfortunately, even though it's a 90-10 issue within the base of the Democratic Party, it's a 10-90 issue when it comes to the actual elected representatives. One of the things that I recently experienced was I did a campaign rally with Abdul al-Sayed in Michigan.
Woo! Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. He's a wonderful guy. He ran for governor in 2018. Unfortunately, he lost. He's a Bernie-crat. Pro-Medicare for all.
Yep.
Anti-Zionist.
Yep.
And he has a pretty simple message. He wants to fight. He wants to fight for his constituents. And he wants to stop these wars of choice, these unnecessary wars that we engage in, and take back those funds and rebuild this country. But of course, although Abdul and I had done many other streams in the past, I went to Dearborn, I ate some kebab with him, worked out. He does he can bench press 3 plates. Very impressive. Yeah. And although I'd done that before and fundraised for him and whatnot, this time it was a little different. Apparently, when you go on a stump, when you go on a campaign rally and speak before a politician, all of a sudden Jake Tapper comes after you. I didn't know that. I didn't realize it was like that. Now, he's hated me for a very long time, Jake Tapper, but this was his opportunity to strike. It went from Third Way, which is a centrist, right-wing, pro-Israel, corporate donor lobbying group, writing a piece in the Wall Street Journal, an opinion editorial in the Wall Street Journal, to almost overnight after that revelation that I was doing this stump with Abdul, it turned into this massive issue. All of a sudden, all of these prominent right-wing Democrats, centrist Democrats, establishment Democrats, Israel First Democrats realized that the number one issue that they had to address was me going on a rally with Abdul al-Sayed. That's all they talked about. While America was bombing Iran and in many respects actually failing to achieve any of its military objectives, as Donald Trump was demanding the genocide of the Iranian population. That's all Democrats were talking about. Elisa Slotkin, Michigan senator. Abdul's opponents, Mallory McMorrow and Haley Stevens. Haley Stevens directly the AIPAC candidate. Mallory McMorrow is supposed to be the Israel skeptic candidate, more moderate progressive. very dangerous. Moderate progressives are something that I've seen in my experience that will be a massive challenge towards true left-flank candidates that are actually demonstrating left populism, that are actually advocating for the people. The Democratic Party is not stupid. They already know that there is a real growth, a real momentum on our side. So in order to cut away at that, in order to make it as difficult as possible for people like Abdul El-Sayed to get elected, they're going to put up not only the right-wing candidates, like Haley Stevens, but they're also going to put up a progressive with a smile that is re-triangulating their position, an empty suit. So it's pertinent that you understand exactly what's going on and stay aware of this design. But Mallory McMorrow and Stevens both yelled at Abdul, said it was inappropriate for him to allow someone, a dangerous figure like myself, a radical, dangerous figure like myself, to do these rallies. Well, we did those rallies anyway. Hundreds of students showed up. Yeah. At MSU and also at University of Michigan. 400 in one, 600 in the other. And it wasn't just the students that showed up. Rashida Tlaib showed up to University of Michigan as well.
Woo!
But that's Rashida, obviously. She's always going to be there. But what I found particularly interesting was Debbie Dingell also showed up. And Debbie she's pretty progressive, but she's a regular Democrat. But she keeps a close eye on the way things are going, especially in Michigan. Now, we're in Los Angeles, we're in California. You guys might not have ever heard of Debbie Dingell, but she very famously rang the alarm bells on Michigan going red twice, both in 2016 and then also in 2024. And what Debbie told the Associated Press, Debbie's husband, by the way, I think is the architect of Medicare for All. So they're woke. They're good. They're good people. But what Debbie told the Associated Press was, I had not seen this level of enthusiasm for any rally, especially by young people, in quite a while. So I think that we have a real opportunity to make changes in the only party, unfortunately, in our current duopoly, that we can enter, that we can push in the appropriate direction. I know a lot of people feel discouraged. They saw the Democrats participate enthusiastically in the genocide of the Palestinians. They did do that. Many of them were either silent or many of them were in support of it. Now, you don't hear that from Democrats so much any longer. It almost feels like there is at least some sense of shame, or at least they understand that they have to recenter their message around, Palestinian sovereignty, fake calls for a two-state solution. It's not enough. But the very fact that they are no longer as loud and as proud of their advocacy for Israel, the very fact that even someone like Gavin Newsom feels the need to go out there on a podcast with the Pod Johns and say Israel's an apartheid state, even if he takes it back 2 days later and gets a boss call from the Democratic...
It's already out there.
Yeah, but from the Democratic majority of Israel, they did a boss call. Immediately, Gavin Newsom comes out the next day. He's like, oh, it's not an apartheid, actually. Whatever. Empty suits, all of them. But we know that. And it's not just people like ourselves that now know that that's an empty suit. I think that resentment is shared by a lot more people. A lot more people than I ever could have fathomed. A lot more people than I ever could have imagined. I've gone all around this country. I've gone to Minneapolis. I've participated in these rallies. I've gotten tear gassed, pepper sprayed, stun grenaded, all of it. But one thing I found to be particularly interesting in my experiences was there were a lot of people alongside myself that weren't just young people. There were a lot of old people. There were a lot of Deborahs and a lot of Barbaras, right? 75 years old.
We saw that video.
Yeah.
That lady
Well, she didn't know who I was on CNN. She came up to me. She's like, "What's your deal?" But actually, that was an interesting conversation because both Donnie at CNN and myself, we asked her. We said, "What are you doing here? Like, what do you think about Donald Trump?" She said, "I hate him." Right? I said, "What do you think about the Democratic Party?" She's a 75-year-old lady, obviously college educated, wealthy. Supposed to be a Nancy Pelosi type. Supposed to be the type that's like riding with Hillary Clinton unconditionally, right? And she said, "I'm sick and tired of what the Democrats are doing. I'm sick and tired of the lack of action from the Democrats." And then I asked her, "What do you think about Zoran Mamdani?" She stopped. She said, "I love him."
Yeah.
I never thought that demographic would say that about a 34-year-old brown Muslim socialist who is openly anti-Zionist.
Woo.
Obviously, things are changing in this country. So don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged when you hear these attacks, the slander, the smears, the lies, and just stay the course and keep pushing. Because I think we're at the precipice of some real change in this country. And the reality of the matter is, if we don't achieve that real change, we have some really dark days ahead of ourselves. So yeah, on that note, I think we can, is that enough time, you think?
Yes. Let's make some noise for Hasan.
Woo.